boat and the burly man in it must be familiar to generations of Blakeney regulars, but they still exercise a reasonable caution. The nature of birds and simple seals is more or less constant. The nature of man can be variable, and even Ted eels may be no exception. Winter's almost over on Blakeney Point, and if Brent geese have thoughts, they must be turning to the prospect of the coming migration. But it's still cold. North Norfolk people never seem to tire of pointing out that there's nothing between here and the North Pole. And they say the wind is lazy, making no detours but striking straight to the marrow. Only the hardy creatures come to the point in the cold, conditioned to it or clothed for it, and keeping on the move. While the birds conform to instinct, coming and going according to nature's programme, Ted Eels adapts. In some respects, he's better conditioned to life on the point than they are, a man for all the seasons. The tide rinsing the beach interrupts the feeding birds and others who live in part off worms. They act as unpaid wardens, eyes and ears for Ted if he's away.
Ain't got that long stick. No, it's creeping up a bit now.
Blakeney Point is something of a mapmaker's nightmare. Its outlines are constantly smudged by tides and erased by the wind. The only stable part of this turbulent spit is man-made, the warden's house and lookout sitting like an abandoned railway wagon on the western edge. Ted retired in 1980 after 41 years as warden, with time off for wartime naval service. In spring and summer, the old lifeboat station was home for Betty and him. Ted followed his father as warden. Indeed, young Teddy figured in a National Trust report for 1929 as a summer litter collector. Some things don't change, it seems. But on Blakeney Point, it's not only litter which is dumped where it's not wanted.
What's that? Still plenty of sand here, Liz?
Yeah.
That won't be too bad, I don't think. Oh, that ain't too bad, Lizzie. That's a damp was last year, is it?
There's plenty of sand blowing
No. I can put the kettle on. I think I'll go round the back and see how things are. Come, Sal. That's very good. Come on here.
A man's summer home is his sandcastle. But the neighbours demand Ted's attention now, the people next door.
Of the 4 species of terns that nest at Blakeney, the sandwich terns are the most punctual on arrival every springtime. And by the time we get settled in there, they've already located their sites for the summer. Quite sociable lot of people, they have to be, because they all nest together. Flying in from West Africa and straight into their nesting grounds, rather incredible early arrivals in March. The common tern as well follow on. Not very long after, they too, and the little terns searching and locating their old sites, if it's still there, from the last winter's storms. The Arctic tern, the odd 2 or 3 pair that we get, just as regular. So we have to be just as regular ourselves by getting out this long, thin line of string which separates the thousands of people from the nesting grounds.
We got a rather special area here. This little bit of show ground where everybody come and have a look at them.
Yeah.
Post, and then a not notice board. Stick that wire on that post to start.
Yeah, right.
Our biggest job is to protect these birds in a manner which is quite unique, I think.
2 half inches on that post, that's all you want.
Since the war, we've put out this 3.5 mile of fencing, as we call it. It's not really a fence, it's a bit of string, which tell the public how far they can come without doing damage. They protect the terns literally by this agricultural string. 3.5 miles of it is laid out every year before the terns start nesting, if possible. My assistants, who's brand new every year, have to be taught the routine, so we've got a bit of a headache on at times. Already the common terns are there, pairing off strongly and giving fish to their lady loves and getting ready to lay eggs. Same with the sandwich terns, oyster catchers piping away and getting ready, black-headed gulls, which we don't like to see but we have to put up with, ring plovers squabbling who should have who, and there's a little tern itself getting ready to nest as well. Blakeney Point can be attractive for early morning, high tides, and this is the sort of view I got from my bedroom window before we start work in the mornings. A picture which I shall always remember. High tide at Blakeney Point. In amongst the dunes, of course, anything can happen. There's a redshank concealing herself on her nest, and there's the ring plover, one of the favourites of everybody, just settling down on her 4 very large eggs. 28 days of incubation, it's a long old wait. Herring gull, which I allowed when I was there 1 pair to nest. But the oyster catchers, success story I suppose, they're 3 pairs when I was 12 years old, when my father was warden. Now there's 145 to 160 pairs. They're so overcrowded they nest inland a bit. Common terns, the faithful nesting bird, which literally established Blakeney many years ago because they've been nesting from time immemorial. We've had about 800 or 900 pairs on average every year, up to 1980. Quite a comfortable looking bird, but rather drab, these hen birds. They have to sit hours on the nest. The Arctic tern is my favourite, probably amongst the terns as regards graceful and coloration, the lovely blood-red beak, grey mantle breast and what have we, the lovely long tail streamers, distinguished with that lovely outer black band down the primaries there. Soon after the war I discovered I'd got a couple of pairs. Now we've got 3.5 pairs, which may sound funny to you, but we've got hybrids, crossbreeding, lovely long tail streamers in the air. And there's our hybrid pair. The hen bird, of course, is the Arctic tern, the lovely white-baked for her chick, which the cockbird is a common tern, which he's presented his family with. She'd ate that one, actually. Pair of chicks, which are quite dark and dusky. They should be, if they're going to be blood-red Arctics, but they're not always the same when they're hybrids. They change over just like the rest of the tern families around them. The hen birds shoved off and the cockbirds left to look after the family. Little terns established themselves already with their difficult to spot eggs in the soft shingle and sand, which is their natural sort of area. They love this ground, which is quite vulnerable to them at times because storms will bring the high tides up and they can easily get washed out. So they have a hard life, the little terns. Visitors can easily tread on their eggs if they're not protected. Lovely yellow beak, white forehead, which you can't mistake. Very tiny creatures compared to the rest of the terns. The sandwich tern colony are well underway by mid-May, sitting tight on eggs and what have we, and squabbling amongst each other. It's not really squabbling, just friendship, really. You have to be sociable because there's so many of them so close together. There's a grey-headed chap. He's getting old, like many of us. And there's obviously a hen bird there of the sandwich species, and a cockbird in the background with his lovely long, tough beak and the crest which he rises. Black-headed gulls, the chap which we dread because he'll gobble anybody's eggs, and he's nested right slap bang in the middle of that group of sandwich terns, and undoubtedly he can take an egg which he has there. Suddenly all the terns take off and there's an intruder, a chap with a dog or some people with children. There it is, everybody's get the wind up when the dog arrives. The ring plover put her broken wing act on to lead that dog away, which she can do quite easily, very often do. If a dog's on his own, he'll follow that ring plover until she's safely away from the nesting ground. This happens when all the people suddenly arrive on the ferry boats and you can't help the odd intruder. Picnickers have already settled in for the day. The dunes have got acres and acres of picnic space for people to enjoy themselves. And this today occurs. If you ever come to Blakeney, you'll see exactly this. School parties that visit Blakeney Point take up a lot of time, but nevertheless it gives us great pleasure to instruct and teach these kids what it's all about. Apart from them, of course, we've got all these hundreds of people arriving on the ferries each day, which keep us running about like greyhounds, my assistants in particular, so we don't get much time for ourselves, even food at times.
Got rid of your skulls, all right?
They're all finished now.
The mine's all right, it's quite good actually.
Mine were pretty interested as well.
Yeah.
A bit more interested than the teachers.
I don't know what we've got coming this afternoon, but hey, had your grub?
Yeah, we just been and got that.
That's right, and I'll go and try and get mine.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, we got another school I know, at least.
Yeah, 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
I think.
So
Something like that.
if you, Simon, you guide that little tannery this afternoon, because there'll be some people coming over on the boat soon.
There's a chap coming around with a spaniel.
Is it on
making
lead?
his way towards it. No, it's open.
Oh, blast, I'll let
It's
us
making his way towards the little turnery. So
I'll
if
go and sort him out.
you're going round that way. Yeah.
I'll go and get my grub then and
Yeah.
see you about an hour,
see you.
all right?
Right.
And so off for a quick cup of tea and a wad, as we say in Norfolk, to the old lifeboat house, which has been my summer home all my life.
All right, another one finished with, Liz?
Have you dinner now then?
Oh, don't talk about dinner, I can't stop for that now. I just want to see who's coming after dinner. There should be 2 or 3 more, I think. At least
I think
2
it's
anyway.
2 this afternoon.
I went into bed, 1:25 and 1:30. We soon sort them out. Another couple of weeks and we'll be through this lot. Hello there. What school's this, Peter?
This is Meadow School.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, look, we're going to have a quick chat and then nip inside the hut for a few minutes. Only half of us, because it's rather a special area and we want to be very quiet in there, because outside the hut is where the terns, some of them are nesting, and oyster catchers. And we should see some seals, if we're lucky, as well, through the telescope. So we want to break ourselves in half. Can we have half in at a time? Very quietly. Come up this end so we can have a good look through the telescope. 2 or 3 of you up this end. That's right, you 2 lads, or you. Another one here. Very quietly. And don't put your glasses out the window too far. You stop there with me. I'll let you have a first look. You sit on the phone, old Charlie. Just see what we can see out here. There's all sorts. I can see a ring plover chick straight away. You have a peep at him. Can you do a quick... See her there? Ring plover chick. Oyster catchers out there on the mud, feeding. And if we're lucky, we should pick those seals up we mentioned. There they are, out on the furthest bank. Get your binoculars over the top of the ridge. Common seal, aren't they? Not grey, common. They have their pups this month. When we've seen the seals, we'd have a wander around the turnary and see these birds much closer. All right?
And so the hatch begins the first week in June. Usually everybody suddenly discover they've got chicks to look after. There's a common tern hatching. A typical example, egg tooth on this chap, which he'll lose after 2 or 3 days, or the same with this fellow chipping through behind him. And this is what we all love to see, because that gives us great satisfaction. After guarding all these nesting areas, we see these chicks suddenly appearing and growing rapidly. These 2 in particular are about 7 or 8 days old. Guarded very closely, the common tern, because they don't trust anybody with their chicks. And there's an example of Arctic and common tern chicks together. The feeder's given the game away. The lovely orangey red legs on the right, which is the Arctic tern. Somebody with an unwanted cap. The sandwich terns are probably the most fascinating at this stage, because all their chicks hatch out together. That is to say, when they all lay together the same week, you get the hatch the same week, about 3 weeks after they lay. Some of them get sorted out, but not to worry. They don't really mean it, because they have to look after their neighbours' children very often, which, as the season goes through, swarms of these chicks invade various parts of the ternaries, much to the disgust of the other terns, the common terns and what have we. Little tern chick with her parent just away from the nest. They too get very mobile, rather dangerously so, because the parents are out fishing and little tern chicks are apt to crouch in somebody's footprint. They're very vulnerable at this stage, so you just hope for the best on these occasions. Little terns are very good parents, but they have to find food for their chicks, obviously, so they have to leave them on the beaches on their own while they go off and fish in the harbour. The whitebait fishermen, likewise, are catching their shoals of whitebait for market. They too rely on the terns at times to indicate where the fish shoals are, so everybody's happy, because when there's whitebait being caught in the harbour, there's always some left over for the terns. Sand eels amongst them, which have to be graded out, of course. Delicious fish, these whitebait, if you eat them fresh, like this chap. Tiny fish for the first time, of course, but a large one. Once you've tasted 1 or 2, you can get anything down. The odd shrimp was presented to little tern chicks, which is not terribly good, because that would probably kill that chick if he'd try to eat it. The husk is too hard. Many terns fishing in all directions and people being fed in all directions. Thousands of terns from various parts of the coastline join in as well as ours, so it's quite a sight at ebb tide to watch the terns fishing as well as feeding. If you approach the terneries during the nesting season, you soon know about it because the terns are very vicious. They don't care who it is. If you step over that wire, you get a bang on the head right quick. If you're a rabbit, you have to run like the devil. And many other people who don't realise it walk in there and say, oh, I can't be bothered about this fencing lark, and you soon get a crack on the skull, as we say in Norfolk. Common terns in particular are the most fierce. I've seen these old hares getting belted about. They get so many predators which do so much damage to them, their eggs and their nests. The rats is the warden's job to keep down, and here's an example of where one got through the barrier and did a lot of damage. Black-headed gull chicks are taught how to pinch eggs before they can fly. Kestrel, we had one of these chaps nest, and suddenly I realised that he was carrying my little tern chicks home to feed his chicks on, which I didn't like very much at all, I assure you. Nesting in the roof of my own bedroom, which even made it worse. Another bird similar to the kestrel, but he works at night, of course, or in the evenings, is a short-eared owl, with his pellet left behind for evidence. Chop the heads off common terns and any other bird which is sitting on eggs, take the meat off the breast, and that's it. There's something worse than that, though, much worse. The weather. You can't control that.
After a storm, the shape of Blakeney Point may be modified, but not the substance. It's pinned down by acres of marram grass. It was this same grass which was transplanted in the deserts of North Africa. It stabilized the sand, and with stability came fertility and food. Ted Eales is as well rooted in this bit of Norfolk as that grass. His stability brought order, the management of nature, maintaining a balance between predator and quarry, the watchers and the watched. Wardens of Blakeney Point have been kings of a kind of commonwealth ever since the National Trust acquired it for the people in 1912. Ted Eales has abdicated now, but he's seldom absent. For many people, Ted is Blakeney Point. They find it hard to think of the one without the other. His purpose as warden has been to help give it meaning for thousands of visitors and millions more who see his films. And they're grateful.